Stop the tape right there. July 4th, 2026, center court at Wimbledon. Alexandra Eala is on her knees, both hands down on the grass, tears on her face, the crowd still exploding around her. And for a few seconds, she looks almost detached from the noise, like the stadium has disappeared and she has fallen into a private memory that nobody else can see. That is the image. That is the moment. And if you only look at the scoreboard, you will miss the scale of what just happened. Because this was not simply a seeded player getting knocked out. This was not some random early round surprise that flashes across social media and vanishes by the next day. Alex Eala, a young player from the Philippines, had just beaten Iga Swiatek, the defending Wimbledon champion, the number 3 seed, and a 6-time Grand Slam champion on the most famous court in tennis. She did it in straight sets. She did it with the weight of history pressing on her shoulders. And when it was over, her body told the truth before words could. This meant far more than one result. To understand why she broke down like that, you have to go backward. Not to the warm-up, not to the draw ceremony, not even the first ball struck that afternoon. You have to go all the way back to a small court in the Philippines after school where a little girl in ruffled socks and light-up shoes was mostly concerned with one thing, trying to beat her brother. That is where the real story begins. Eala was born in Quezon City, Philippines, into a family that already understood sport. Her mother, Riza, had competed as a swimmer at the Southeast Asian Games. Her father, Mike, helped support a household where athletics had a place, but tennis was never the obvious road. In the Philippines, tennis does not dominate the national imagination the way basketball or volleyball can. It is not the sport most children grow up seeing everywhere. It is not the easiest sport to chase if you want attention, infrastructure, or a clear ladder to the top. And that matters because it means Eala did not start in a system designed to carry her. She started because the game was in the family. Her grandfather introduced her to tennis. Her brother was already playing. Like so many younger siblings, she wanted to keep up. At first, the dream was not global and it was not glamorous. It was simple. Beat her brother, win the rally, hit one more ball, come back the next day and do it again. There were no cameras around that court, no headlines, no mythology, just repetition, discipline, and a message from her grandfather that would follow her across years and continents. If you want it, you work for it. That is an important distinction. People love the word prodigy because it makes greatness sound effortless. It turns a long road into a magic trick. But Eala's rise does not fit that lazy version of the story. There was nothing automatic about it. In the Philippines, there was no well-worn map for what she was trying to do. There was no established line of Grand Slam stars showing her exactly how this path was supposed to look. She and her family had to believe in something that did not yet have much visible proof. And eventually, belief alone was not enough. The local courts could start her journey, but they could not finish it. Her grandfather had given her the foundation. The Philippines had given her hunger. But to become a world-class player, she needed stronger competition, higher-level coaching, better facilities, and an environment where elite tennis was not the exception, but the daily standard. So, at 13 years old, her family made the decision that changed everything. They sent her to Spain, to Mallorca, to the Rafa Nadal Academy. Say that slowly, because it is easy to throw that fact out and move on. She was 13, old enough to understand what she was leaving, young enough to still need home every single day. She left the Philippines, she left her parents, she left her brother, she left the ordinary rhythm of growing up inside her own family, and she moved halfway around the world into a system built on structure, pressure, repetition, and world-class expectation. On paper, it sounds ideal. In real life, it is brutal. Yes, the academy offered elite courts, elite coaching, elite players, and a culture shaped by one of the fiercest competitors the sport has ever seen. But no academy can erase homesickness. No famous tennis name can make loneliness easy for a teenager. No training center can promise that a girl from the Philippines will survive the emotional and competitive grind of professional tennis. Those first months were hard, then the next year was hard, then the one after that. Eala kept training, keep improving, keep showing up. And this is where a lot of people lose the thread of an athlete's story, because improvement in tennis does not always look dramatic from the outside. You can spend years getting better and still appear invisible to casual fans. You can give up comfort, family life, and normalcy and still be ranked outside the top 100. You can do everything right and still not know whether the breakthrough is coming at all. For Eala, those years were not theory, they were reality. There were signs, of course. She had real junior success. In 2022, she won the U.S. Open girls singles title and established herself as one of the brightest junior talents in the sport. People who follow tennis closely knew she had something special. But junior success is not a professional ranking. Potential does not win WTA Tour matches by itself. On the pro circuit, reputation means nothing once the first point starts. By 2024, she was still fighting through that stage of the climb. Her ranking was outside the top 100. At one point, she was around number 147 in the world, and that number tells a harsh truth. It means you are good enough to dream honestly, but not established enough to breathe easily. Every match matters. Every travel plan matters. Every injury scare matters. Every loss feels heavy because so much has already been invested. That is the part people do not always see when they celebrate the breakthrough. A ranking like that is not just a statistic, it is a measure of uncertainty. It carries the cost of the years away from home. It carries the family's sacrifice. It carries the quiet question that hovers around every long athletic pursuit. How much longer can we keep doing this? Eala kept going, and then came Miami in March of 2025. That tournament changed the conversation. She entered the Miami Open as a wild card, not as a favorite and not as the center of attention. To much of the wider public, she was still a promising player from the Philippines trying to push her way into bigger companies. Then she started winning. She beat Jelena Ostapenko, a former Grand Slam champion, with the kind of power that can overwhelm opponents. Then she beat Madison Keys, another major champion, another proven force, another test she was not expected to pass. And then came Swiatek. At that point, Swiatek was not simply one more elite name in a draw. She was one of the defining champions of her era, the kind of player who makes opponents feel time shrinking around them. But Eala beat her 6-2, 7-5. Not through chaos, not because the moment got weird, not because the favorite melted down and handed it away. She beat her by playing tennis that belonged on that stage. Afterwards, Swiatek admitted Eala had been better that day. That matters. Because after years of sacrifice, Miami gave Eala something more valuable than hype, evidence, proof. It did not hand her a title. Her run ended in the semifinal against Jessica Pegula, but it moved something fundamental inside the story. The question stopped being whether she could stand with those players and started becoming how often she could beat them. From there, the momentum built. Her ranking climbed. The attention around her grew. More Filipino fans started setting alarms in the middle of the night. More people started believing that this was not a fleeting spark. She won at the WTA 125 level. She backed up the Miami breakthrough with more results. Confidence stopped looking like a single-week surge and started looking like a trend. By the time Wimbledon arrived in 2026, the impossible had become official. Eala was the number 29 seed, the first Filipino player ever seeded at a Grand Slam. Do not rush past that. For a country of more than 100 million people, that was not a trivial milestone. It meant tennis suddenly had a visible standard bearer, not an abstract possibility, a real one. A young woman who had grown up there, trained with her grandfather, left home at 13, endured the lonely years in Spain, and arrived at the sport's most tradition-soaked stage, carrying all of that with her. And Wimbledon is not just another stop on the calendar. Wimbledon comes with ritual, with quiet, with history, with pressure that feels older than the players themselves. Eala stepped into that environment and got to work immediately. In the first round, she beat Renata Zarazua 6-1, 6-2. That victory made her the first Filipino player to win a Wimbledon main draw singles match. For many athletes, that alone would have been enough to define a tournament. It was not enough for her. In the second round, she faced Maya Joint, and this one was different. Eala lost the first set 6-3. Suddenly, the match had tension. Suddenly, she had to show that this run was not going to stall at the first sign of resistance. She answered by taking control completely, winning the next two sets 6-2, 6-0. That result pushed her into the third round and made her the first Filipino singles player to reach the third round of a Grand Slam in the Open era. And waiting there was Swiatek again. But this was not Miami. Miami was the announcement. This was the examination. Miami asked whether Eala could break through, Wimbledon asked whether she could do it when the stage was louder, the history heavier, and the entire tennis world fully aware of what was at stake. From the start, the match carried that pressure. The first set was not loose or free-flowing. It was tense, physical, demanding tennis, the kind of set where every service game seems to carry consequences for the next 3 games after it. Swiatek knew exactly what had happened in Miami. She knew Eala was no longer just an interesting young player, and Eala knew something too. Beating a champion once gets attention. Beating her again on center court at Wimbledon changes your career. The set stretched and stretched. Neither player could escape. The longer it went, the more the emotional center of the match started to form around the tiebreak. Eala jumped ahead 5-2. For a moment, it looked as though she might seize it cleanly. But Swiatek is Swiatek for a reason. She fought back, and the lead disappeared. The pressure flipped. One loose point could have changed the entire afternoon. Then Swiatek had a set point. Eala saved it. Then Swiatek had another set point. Eala saved that too. Those were not match points, but anyone watching understood how massive they were. If the defending champion claimed that first set, after all of that tension, the emotional momentum might have shifted completely. Instead, Eala held her nerve at 9, all in the tiebreak, found another level, and closed it out 11-9. The opening set lasted 84 minutes. The score was 7-6. And in many ways, that was the hinge of the whole match. Because after surviving that storm, Eala looked liberated. In the second set, the scoreboard began to reflect what her tennis had been saying. She surged to a 4-0 lead. Center court was stunned, not because she was playing reckless miracle tennis, but because she looked composed, deliberate, grounded, like a player performing a plan she had been building toward for years. Swiatek pushed back. Of course she did, trimming it to 4-2. Champions make you finish. But Eala did not unravel. She stayed with the match, trusted her patterns, kept moving forward, and took the set 6-2. Then it was over. And that is when she collapsed to her knees. Not as theater, not as a polished celebration designed for the cameras. This looked like release, the kind of release that only comes when years of work, separation, uncertainty, and belief all rush into the same second. The little girl in ruffled socks was there. The grandfather on the after-school court was there. The 13-year-old boarding a plane to Spain was there. The homesick nights in Mallorca were there. The rankings outside the top 100 were there. The family watching from the Philippines while much of the country slept was there. The fans waking up in the middle of the night, some of them emotional at around 1 a.m, were there too. That is why the tears landed the way they did. Athletes cry all the time. But sometimes you can tell when a player is not only reacting to a match. Sometimes you can see someone reacting to the years. Afterward, when she tried to talk through it, she made the significance plain. She spoke about what it means to beat someone like Swiatek. She noted that for a player who has won that much, a result like this may become one line in a long career. But for someone from the Philippines, this was not small. This was everything. And then she went back to the image that makes the whole journey feel human, going to practice with her brother and grandfather after school, the ruffled socks, the light-up shoes, the chubby cheeks, the little girl who could not possibly have understood where tennis would eventually take her. She said that for that little girl, this moment would have meant the world. That is not just a good quote. That is the whole story in one frame. Because this was bigger than an upset. Upsets happen, seeds fall, fans go wild, clips circulate, then the tour moves on. This felt different. This felt like a full circle moment for a player in a country. A young woman from a nation without a long Grand Slam tennis tradition stood on the sport's oldest major stage, beat one of the defining champions of her time, and forced the tennis world to look at Philippine tennis differently. And still, the most revealing thing may have come after the tears. Eala was emotional, yes, but she was not satisfied. That matters. The danger after a historic breakthrough is that everyone around the athlete turns the moment into a monument. They want the story to end right there because it is neat and emotional and cinematic. Eala did not sound interested in ending anything. She still had another match waiting. Jasmine Paolini was next in the round of 16, a dangerous top player with a proven record of going deep on major stages. Eala's message was clear. This run was not supposed to become a museum exhibit while the tournament was still alive. And that is what makes this next phase so compelling. The questions have kept changing around her career. First, the question was whether a Filipino player could reach this level at all. Miami answered part of that. Then the question became whether she could back up the breakthrough. Her ranking rise and additional results answered that. Then Wimbledon put her under the pressure of history and asked whether she could still hit through the moment. She answered that too. So now the question is different again. Not whether she belongs, she does. Not whether she can beat elite players, she can. The question now is how far this can go. And that is why this result hit so hard in the Philippines. It was not only pride, it was permission for a young girl in Manila, in Quezon City, in Cebu, in Davao, or anywhere else in the country to pick up a racket and think this game can belong to her too. Permission for families to believe that tennis is not reserved only for places with long tradition and deeper infrastructure. Permission for a sports-loving country to imagine a new kind of star. Eala is not the next version of somebody else. She is not a copy of another young sensation. She is the first Alex Eala, and being the first carries its own weight. The first Filipino seeded at a Grand Slam, the first Filipino to win a Wimbledon main draw singles match, the first Filipino singles player to reach the third round of a major in the Open era, the first Filipino to reach the second week of a major. Those firsts are powerful, but they are also heavy. They bring expectations. They magnify wins and losses. They turn every match into something bigger than a match. Now comes the second chapter of the breakthrough, the chapter where the tour no longer treats you like a surprise and every opponent knows exactly what you can do. Tennis does not pause for emotion. It does not reward you for having a beautiful backstory. It asks again and again whether you can do it one more time. But on July 4th, 2026, one thing became undeniable. Alex Eala is no longer chasing belief. She has that now, from herself, from her family, from a nation, and from everyone who watched her stand on center court, stare down a defending champion, save 2 set points, win the biggest match of her life, and then make it clear that she was not finished. That is not the end of the story. That is where the story changes. And from this point forward, the real question is no longer how she got here. It is how much farther she can go.